Hi there, thanks for joining us. I'm Kirsten Nichter.
I'm Jody McLaren.
And we are here talking to parents about how to cultivate independence in your child. Thanks for joining us. We will actually post this on Connections Parent Coaching, just in case you missed us. Last week or 2 weeks ago?
Last week.
Jody here did a class for parents at our local, Schenectady Montessori, and Montessori of Schenectady, correct?
Yeah, Montessori School of Schenectady.
Yep. And we're just talking about that, so we thought we would share some of that information with you as parents. So the topic was how to cultivate independence in your child. And you went over a couple of things, 5 things that parents can do. And what is the very first thing, or why actually, let's back up and talk about why creating independence is so important.
I think the first thing that parents were kind of surprised at is when they think about independence, they're thinking mostly about, can my child put on their own shoes? Can they put on their own coat? How independent of the daily life skills. And really, I think independence encompasses so much more. It's your social emotional learning, it's your frustration tolerance, it's so many more things than just being able to do those very task-oriented independent skills. So that was the first thing we talked about. When we're talking about independence, it's really across the board and helping your child be an independent person out in the world away from you. So much we're with our children and we're there to support them, but at some point they do leave us, even just to go to kindergarten for the day or to go to preschool for a few hours, or to maybe have a babysitter come. So really it's these skills that are going to help them be successful in those situations, be better problem solvers, be able to handle unexpected situations, and show some flexibility.
I love that. And if you don't know, Jody and I are both local educators, and we have a separate business working with parents in small group and classes and one-on-one. And one of the things that we really like to encourage parents to do is we're all about connection and doing it in a research-based method so that we're creating kids with self-esteem and resilience, and also teaching them these skills so that someday they can be independent. And we're really working on, at this younger age, teaching these skills so that someday they can be these awesome human adults. And we want to do it in a very age-appropriate, developmentally appropriate way so that we're connecting with kids. We're not creating shame. We're not punishing kids for making mistakes. And, a word we love, and we're teaching them these awesome skills for independence for someday.
Absolutely.
So what's the very first thing that we can do if I'm a parent, what's one of the things that I can do to help promote independence?
Well, I think of all the things we're going to talk about briefly, this could be a whole class just on number 1, number 2, number 3. There are so much more in depth we can go into, but at a very basic level, I think giving your child choices is such an important skill for them to learn problem solving and how to make a choice. It doesn't necessarily come intrinsically to making choices for some children. It is a skill that has to be taught. So it really does, giving your child limited choices, and this doesn't mean they get to choose everything. But it might be, a choice of what movie do you want to watch tonight for a family movie night? What color shirt do you want to wear today? Do you, maybe even a choice of an option of 2 different meal choices. Do you want chicken nuggets or macaroni and cheese? So it's really giving those limited choices and choices that you can follow through with, and not allowing them just to have the full gamut of choices, so to speak, but really setting those boundaries of what those choices could be, and giving children choices and allowing them to have it empowers them. I guess that's the best word. Giving choices really empowers your children. It builds their self-esteem. And it really helps them with problem solving later on in life. It gives them the practice.
I think this is such an important thing to teach kids in general. Like you said, this could be an entire class in itself. Oftentimes, as adults, we have trouble making decisions. And this is a practice skill, and we want to teach it and start early with our kids, giving them choices, and I like to say within a framework, because remember, you're the parent, you have the developed brain, and so it's not unlimited choices. So we are making our kids happy all the time. It's giving them that skill of making a choice within these options.
Right.
And really, that's actually the thing that helps them build that self-esteem and ability to problem solve. And when we first start this, we might see that kids are struggling with this, and that's okay, because as we're learning new skills, we struggle, but so very important in building independence.
And I would say one other, I think, side note of choices that really helps families is giving your child a choice and following through with that and giving them a little sense of control of their lives. It lessens your power struggles immensely, because they feel like they have a little bit of control. Because I think for some children, if every decision is made for them and they're not able to have any input, it really causes those power struggles that we have.
Absolutely. And I think one of the other things, like you were kind of saying, like in addition to them feeling a sense of control, which kids at this age, they're developing that autonomy. And I lost my train of thought, so maybe we'll go back. Not sure. So let's go on to what's the second thing that helps build independence?
I think giving your child responsibility. In the classroom, we talk a lot about the children. This is your classroom. This isn't my classroom. It's your classroom. So you have to be part of maintaining the classroom. There are things you are responsible for. Again, they are all age appropriate. But giving your child some sense of belonging and purpose in your home really does lead to some really great independent thinking and independent skills. I mean, some of the things you could do is, if you have a younger sibling, have them be part of that process of every time you change the diaper, it's their job to get the diaper or the wipes or whatever it might be that works for your family. Maybe it's helping set the table. It could be just making the bed. Being part of our family means you have a certain responsibility that we expect you to help with and be part of that.
I love this because not only does this help create those skills for independence, but one of the things that this does is it creates connection with your child, because we're letting you know that you belong in this family and you have an important job. So a lot of these things go hand in hand, where it's like this win-win. Your child feels empowered, they feel great, they know where they belong, and we're teaching them these awesome independent living skills for later on in life.
They feel they matter.
Yeah. So we have, what do we have next?
Oh, this one I think is maybe one of the hardest ones for parents. I know it was hard for me sometimes to just let them play. We don't have to organize and plan and direct every play date, every interaction your child has with siblings, or not siblings, I should say, playmates and peers. So we really want to let them have some independent play, unstructured from an adult. It's amazing to see when you just step back and let your child and their friend play, where that takes them, where their imagination takes them, the problem solving that they learn on their own, that give and take with relationships and that frustration tolerance we were talking about, and things don't go my way and I want to play this or you want to play that. There's so many skills built into that, and when an adult interrupts that cycle and has something structured, that organic learning just is out the window. Of course, it's hard. We're setting up those play dates. We're the ones who are kind of, I'm like the cruise director of my family. Sometimes I felt like organizing everything, but once you get it organized and once you're there, try and take a step back and allow your child just to kind of organically play with friends. I think that's a huge benefit for them. And also the idea of boredom. I think children say, I'm bored. They don't really know what boredom is. And some of the best thinking and best ideas, the most creative ideas in the world have come from boredom, when we just have time to just be with ourselves and think.
I love this, and it actually is reminding me of what I was going to say before with choices, because a lot of what parents struggle with oftentimes when I'm working with families, and I know myself, I've done this myself, is that we watch our child. If we give them choices, we might see them make what we feel is a wrong choice. And so we tend to step in and we don't let them actually make the choice they want to make and learn from their own mistakes. And obviously, if it's a safety issue, of course you jump in, but a lot of what we're talking about is not. It's our preference. And so this goes along with letting them play. Oftentimes, I'm working with parents and getting out of their own comfort zone to allow their kids to make choices that they wouldn't. And I'm talking about clothing and shoes, like letting them decide what they're comfortable with. And this goes along with play. Like a lot of parents feel that their kids aren't playing appropriately or playing the right way with the toy. And I encourage parents to have, you know, time where they are sitting down with their kid, but oftentimes what we're finding is we're not just letting kids play and explore and be creative and problem solve on their own because we're jumping in too often.
And what I think even you can start simply at home before you even bring the friends in, of just allowing your child to play. Don't feel like you need to be a part of all of their play. They're going to try and bring you in because they want a connection with you. But it's okay to say, no, this is my time, and set that boundary. Like, I'm cooking dinner right now. You can play with, and maybe you have a special set of toys that are just for the kitchen. But allowing them to play on their own without your input all the time, that's like the first step to this, is allowing them to come up with their own ideas and their creativity and to set that boundary ahead of time.
Oh my gosh, of course this could be a whole class because that gets me thinking. Like, I love like the idea of a kitchen basket. I did this with my own kids and I encourage parents to do that. And what's so important is you're saying to your child, I still love you and I would love to play with you, but right now I need to cook dinner. So here are your choices. And I love that because then we're starting to teach that respectful boundary setting. And I can say no to you and still love you at the same time. And that's so important for kids to understand. And it starts in the home environment.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, so we're on to number 4.
Accountability. This is where the and really comes in. You can say, I am sorry, and this is how I'm going to handle it. This is one of those, there's so much I could say about accountability, about how it increases your self-esteem and all of that. But I think really what I would like to talk about with this is the art of an apology. And I think this is the first steps in creating that accountability. So many times as parents, I've seen parents, I mean, I remember even growing up, my parents were just like, say you're sorry. Say you're sorry. Okay, you can say you're sorry, but what does that mean? It's the and. It's what happens after. So a lot of times, what we say here at Montessori School is, I'm sorry, what can I do to make you feel better? There's the and. I'm sorry I hurt your feelings. What can I do to make you feel better? And we have that discussion with both children. We give them each time to talk and tell us what happened. And then, you know, the child who maybe her feelings were hurt, they might say something like, well, maybe you could sit next to me at circle time, or maybe you'll have snack with me. Or sometimes they just say, just don't ever do that again. And it's that accountability part where now they're taking the action. So they said they were sorry, but really that's just words. It's the actions. It's the next step. And I think that if nothing else comes out of this, this number 4, accountability, it's just that art of an apology and what that truly means to young children.
What I'm hearing even more than an apology is conflict resolution. We're teaching kids to communicate with each other. We're teaching kids that it's okay to make mistakes. And what can we do together to figure this out? And how the accountability part comes in, which I love, is that next time we're in a situation like this, I'm going to do this and you're going to do this. Yep. And together we're going to figure it out.
Yeah, absolutely.
one of the things that I think is really important, and often when I'm working with families one-on-one and we're talking about how we can, incorporate this and teach kids. So, there's direct instruction in the moment. And again, we don't do it at the heightened time of the
Right.
thing. We often go back to a situation and have a conversation with kids. The other thing that can happen, and the best way to teach accountability, is parents, you modeling this in your home. Is you modeling this exact thing. You modeling being accountable. You make mistakes in front of your kids, and that's okay because we all do. And so what happens when you make a mistake? Model to your kids how to make a mistake, how to apologize, how to problem solve. And parents laugh when I actually have them doing this because we make a big deal about this in front of our kids, right? And then we practice in these silly situations. So when it comes up in one of those heightened situations, real life, game situations, we're able to do this because we've practiced it.
And if you think about it, if we don't allow our children to take accountability and we swoop in and make it better for them, we're really saying to them, I don't believe in you.
Right.
I don't believe in your ability to do this. So I'm just going to fix it for you. So we want to make sure that we're modeling it so they see it. They have an actual frame of reference to draw from, and then also make sure that they're following through with that. And they're able to, it might not be what you would think as an adult would be the appropriate action to take, but if they're coming up with it, allowing them to follow through with that, because you're saying to them, I believe that you're capable of doing this.
And focus on the process. So their apology might not be perfect the first couple times. And we don't want to go back and be like, oh, I know you just tried to apologize to me, but let me tell you how to do it better. If your child comes to you and tries to say they're sorry, we want to encourage that behavior and find the win and say, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
And if they come and apologize, and I'm working on this as a parent, is not the time to teach. The only thing we want to say back is, I accept, thank you.
Yep. Because sometimes the consequence, whether it be positive or negative, is actually what's going to teach them. Those negative consequences sometimes, maybe a friend doesn't want to play with you on the playground anymore. That's really hard for a parent to hear, and really hard to watch your child go through. But sometimes that is the consequence that they're going to learn. Oh, next time I'm going to make sure I do this differently. I make a better choice. I handle it differently. That's where they learn. That's where the true learning comes from.
And we all learn that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we have number 5 in building independence.
Which we kind of already talked about, which is conflict resolution and that apology. But basically, when you allow them to work through their conflict resolution, have a sense of pride, but they're also working on their own problem solving. So it's like we talked about, there's a consequence. Okay, well, how am I going to do this differently next time? And as a parent, you want to be there to help support them, because maybe that's the time to have that conversation. Well, let's think about this. What could you have done differently? Let's see if we can figure out a better solution to this problem for the next time. Let's talk about it. And we do that a lot in the classroom. Oh, I see you have a problem. Let's see if we can figure out a solution to our problem. I wonder if you tried this. Sometimes you need to kind of lead them a little bit in the direction you need them to go, and then the brainstorming happens, and they're like, well, I could do this, or I could have done this, and those are the perfect opportunities to start talking about that, what they could do. So I think even though they need some guidance from us, allowing them to make those choices, to work through it on their own, and you just being there as a support is really what is a gift you're giving your child. You're really showing them you are capable of doing hard things.
Well, and I love that. I love that we're empowering them, right? Like that's what you're talking about. And I love that. And I love conflict resolution. And the thing is, when you were talking and you were modeling how to do this, some of the things that I didn't hear Jody doing in that was, I didn't hear her finding blame. Who did it? Was it your fault? You did that. right? That's not part of conflict resolution. What we're doing is we're narrating the obvious thing, what's happening, right? Without judgment. We're saying, it does seem like you are in a predicament. Yep, you did drop that. That is a mess. So what do we need to do about it? And then oftentimes when we're feeling overwhelmed, and kids do if they're in a situation like this, help lead them into the direction where you're like, I wonder if, and then you let them brainstorm and kind of come up with solutions and decide what they want to do. And so we're teaching kids, again, how to make those mistakes, right?
Yeah.
And I love this so much.
It's funny you say, we're guiding them and leading them. So Montessori teachers are actually traditionally called guides in the classroom. And, independence and working at a child's own pace and meeting a child where they're at, that really is a premise of Montessori. And really what we're doing is guiding them. We're guiding them to make the choices, come up with the solutions themselves, problem solve. And really that is what a parent's job is as well, is we say you're the child's first teachers, but really you're their first guides through life.
Right. And this works with younger kids. This also works with older kids as well. I mean, I know when my kids were teenagers, and they were asking to do things that maybe I didn't think was a great thing, before I said no. I love what your friend said, so we'll have to talk about that. But one of the things that I talked about was like, let's talk it through. And as my kids talked it through sometimes with me, and they were saying it out loud to themselves, they were kind of like, oh, well, maybe that isn't such a good idea. Right?
Exactly.
And so when we give kids the opportunity to problem solve themselves and guide them to the right answer, or get curious in the moment about, I wonder how you could problem solve this. I wonder if you're going to need something. Like maybe you need a broom because you spilled, or, asking a couple of questions in the moment to help them figure out how to get to their own answer. And that's conflict resolution, really.
Absolutely.
And then we can say, do you need me to do anything to help support you?
Yep. How can I help you?
Yeah.
And we were talking about, so years ago, before my children were even teenagers, someone said to me, I never say no to my children, which I thought was kind of crazy. But then she said, what I say to them is, convince me it's a good idea. And I just loved that, because it gets them thinking. They have to think it through. And so many times they thought it was a good idea, and then it was not such a great idea in the end. And they came to that conclusion themselves, not necessarily me or their father telling them that that was a poor choice, or let's think about this. They came to it themselves. We allowed them to work through it. On the flip side, sometimes we allowed them to make choices or do something that we knew was not going to go the way they thought it was going to go. But they learn tremendously from that process. And so you have to sometimes take a step back. It wasn't a safety issue, anything like that, but it was hard to watch it go south. And I will say, on the flip side, there were some times that it went okay.
Absolutely.
And it worked out for them, even though I thought this was a bad idea.
I feel the same way as a parent. When we allow ourselves to step back, and one of the tools that I use as a parent is I preset myself. I always had to talk to myself and, try to be mindful in the moment when I was talking to my kids, when I knew they were going to present something that I wanted to say no to, but I wanted to remain curious and let them get to the solution themselves. So I had to preset myself going into it. And then, like you said, try to take that step back, because, we've lived a lifetime, but they have to figure out how to live their life. And so even with little kids, I know working with kids, I might go up to them, instead of saying, no, that's a bad idea, I might say, I see you jumping off that couch. Let's talk about that. And getting them to stop their body in the moment and work through problem solving out loud with us. I love all of these ideas on building independence, and what a funny trend I hear throughout all of these is, as a parent, it seems like one of the things, and I think it's probably applicable to all 5, is that we have to get a little bit more comfortable with the uncomfortable.
Oh, yeah.
To allow our children to cultivate some independence with all of these.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And one of the tools Jody and I use when we're working with families, one of our guides, we use the positive discipline curriculum. We love it. And incorporated in the positive discipline are lots of tools for parents to use with children. And these tools are wonderful and great. And to be able to use these tools, oftentimes as parents, we have to first incorporate that skill of being comfortable with the uncomfortable and allowing ourselves to take a step back so that we can use these tools with our kids. And so if you're struggling with that as a parent, it's no big deal because we can help guide you. It's part of the positive discipline curriculum, and please reach out to us and let us know.
Yeah. And I just, as you're saying, as parents, but I also, as you're just talking about this being in the uncomfortable, it is so important for teachers. Like, I feel this way sometimes, even as a teacher of young children.
Yes.
I have to sit in the uncomfortable because I know where I want them to go. I know maybe what they're struggling with. I look at my classroom sometimes and I'm like, what is going on? If I just did it, it would be easier and the classroom would be back to normal and the classroom management piece. So I utilize these tools not only, when my kids were growing up, and I think parents are a great tool for parents, but if you're an educator, an early childhood educator, these can so easily be adapted to your classroom. So again, you might be struggling as a parent, but if you are an educator too, we can certainly, help through some of those struggles. And this is a great resource for you as well.
Absolutely. So one of the things we've been doing, Ending Our Lives, is kind of taking out a positive discipline tool card and kind of going over it a little bit with parents. So I will let Jody here grab a card from the deck.
Silent signals.
Ooh, I love this one.
So this says, parents often talk too much. A silent signal could speak louder than words. Smile and point to the shoes that need to be picked up. Decide with your child on signals that would work better than words during conflict as a reminder of manners. When you feel upset, try putting your hand on your heart to signal, I love you. You'll both feel better. I love that.
I do love this too. And for sure, my kids tell me I talk too much.
Yes. Me too.
So, this is a great reminder for me, even though we both have older kids. You're always a parent. And again, we're educators, so we love these as reminders ourselves, but this is definitely a great one. And I think this one is a good one because I often talk about not jumping in the hole, which means don't join your kid in chaos and dysregulation. If you're going to help your child, you kind of have to stay out of that hole, which is really, really difficult as a parent. Sometimes I jump in and I'm like, yeah, I got to get back out. But this one helps, right? This kind of goes along with, hand signals, but one of the tools I often use when my kids come home and they're like all mad and frustrated, and I try to not use words. I actually try to use, like I try to say to myself, don't use words.
Yeah, it's hard.
It's hard because they just need you to listen.
Yep.
Oftentimes. But I love this one because if we've told our child a few times to get something, we could so easily jump in the hole and start an argument. I've told you so many times. But this is just saying, when they look up at you, point to the shoes. You don't even need to say anything.
Yeah, if you want them to pick up the toys, just point to the toys.
Right. I'm not going to engage in this argument.
I think there's also the silent hand.
Yes.
The waiting hand, I call it, in the classroom. if your child needs you and you're on the phone, so many times it happens. You might be on the phone or you're working or whatever. Just them putting their hand, that's their silent signal to you to say, I need you, without interrupting. If you just kind of tap them, like, okay, I'll be with you in just a second. They know you heard them. They feel they got some input that they needed without having to use any words. And then, then you address their needs at that point. But I love the idea of being able to go around and just, point or just have a calm hand on your shoulder if you need help, whatever that might be.
I love it. Should we do one more?
Let's do one more.
We're going to do one more.
All right. Oh, I get to pick the next one too?
I know.
The anger wheel of choice. We haven't talked much about the wheel of choice, but I do love it.
I love it as well.
I love it. This could be a whole class, the anger of
Yes.
choice. The wheel of choice, I should say. So this is, kind of what it looks like. And it says, teach your children that feelings are always okay, but what they do is not always okay. And we've talked about that so much. Like, all feelings are okay. It's how we go about handling those feelings that we have to teach.
And this kind of goes along with what we were talking about before, where oftentimes there are certain feelings that parents have a difficult time seeing their kid when they're angry or when they're upset or when they're mad. I mean, oftentimes I often see parents saying, you can't do that right now. You can't be mad right now.
Right.
And I think if somebody said to me, I can't be mad right now, I'm just getting madder.
Right. Or there's no reason to be upset about this. Or there's no, yes.
And we've all done it.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure I probably have done it to my children because in the moments, we often do this because we just want them to get better. But this one is a great tool to use and a great visual reminder when you are overwhelmed at it's okay to be angry. We can't do this thing right here when we're angry, but we can do this. And always telling our kids what they can do. So we always want to validate how they're feeling because it's their feelings. It's okay.
Yeah.
And that big word, and here are what your choices are. We talked about choices within a reasonable framework. And this one is great because it's a visual.
Yeah, so what you want to do is go over with your child when they're calm, when they're not in their fight or flight, when they're calm, and discuss what are some alternatives to your behaviors when you're angry. So what are some things you can do? And you kind of put it on this chart. It doesn't have to be a wheel. It could be, pictures or whatever it could be. And that way, when they are angry, you can, oh, I see you're angry.
You could do the silent pointing
There you go.
that we talked about before.
Yeah, let's choose something from the wheel of choice and how we can handle that. And
you could just put it in front of your child when they're angry. And one of the very important things that Jody said is that she didn't say, I'm going to decide what you're going to do when you're angry. She said, when my child is calm, I'm going to go to them and I'm going to say, hey, what are some good options for you when you are angry and upset?
Right.
And doing it with your child.
And as parents, I think it's important to remember that when your child is angry and upset and they're in that fight or flight, they do not have the ability to access language skills. So they can point to something. That is something that they can do in those moments. And it's already something that is preset and talked about. And that will just help bridge that gap and help regulate and calm them. And then you can work on whatever it is that was happening.
Absolutely. So that is our live for today. We'll post this so you can watch it if you weren't able to join us. We also have some classes coming up. We have, if you're local, we have a class coming up right here at the Montessori School.
March 3rd.
March 3rd.
At 5:30.
At 5:30. And then we have some online courses if you're not local and you want to join us. These are interactive workshops for parents, which I think is really fun. Please let us know, reach out to us because we also can work with you one-on-one if you are looking for some more parenting tools. So thanks for joining us today.
Yep. Have a great day.
Have a great day.